Let's step right back into 1888. Picture this. A city literally choked by thick fog, just barely lit by these flickering gas lamps. It's London, and those narrow, twisting alleys? They're hiding one of the darkest secrets in history. Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving headfirst into what is honestly history's most notorious unsolved mystery. I mean, it's been over a century, right? And yet one single name still gives people the creeps. A phantom that absolutely baffled the world's best intelligence agencies. Yup, we're talking about Jack the Ripper. So, to really get a grip on this case, we have to talk about where it actually went down. We're in London's East End, specifically a district called Whitechapel. Now, this wasn't the fancy, high society London you might see in period dramas. No, 1888 Whitechapel was rough. It was defined by crushing poverty, crime, and just sheer desperation. A lot of women, frankly out of options, turned to sex work just to survive. It was already a completely grim reality on its own, but those dark streets were about to witness a level of surgical horror that completely shocked the modern world. 3. That's it. 3 short months. That is all it took for this entire world-famous reign of terror to play out. From August to November of 1888, the pacing of these crimes was just incredibly frantic. In literally a quarter of a year, this one killer managed to completely paralyze a massive metropolis and permanently brand his name into history. It was like a wildfire of absolute hysteria. Which brings us to the big question, right? Who on earth was this guy? How does one person manage to outsmart the police, the public, and the best detectives of the Victorian era and just vanish? For this explainer, I want you to be a co-detective with me. We're cracking open this 130-year-old cold case file. Let's weigh the evidence together and see if we can finally make sense of this puzzle. Section 1. Terror in Whitechapel. Okay, let's dive into this and look at the actual facts on the ground. During that chaotic 3-month window, there were 5 absolutely brutal murders that historians and investigators pretty much universally agree were the work of one person. We call them the canonical 5. And the killer had a very specific routine. He targeted vulnerable, deeply impoverished women wandering the East End streets late at night. Basically, these were victims of opportunity, isolated in the shadows. But it was the sheer, horrific brutality of the crimes that really set them apart. The killer's MO, his modus operandi, was chillingly consistent. First, he'd silence them by slitting their throats, and then came the mutilation, which included the surgical removal of internal organs. And honestly, this is absolutely crucial to the psychological profile. He wasn't just hacking away in the dark. The sheer precision of that organ removal, it strongly points to someone with a solid grasp of anatomy. We're talking a doctor, a surgeon, or at the very least, a highly skilled butcher. Section 2. The infamous letters. But the physical murders, that was only half the terror. This killer also ran a masterclass in psychological warfare, and it's what gave us that legendary name. Smack in the middle of the murder wave, the Central News Agency gets this incredibly creepy letter. Written in bright red ink, it throws this blatant challenge right at the authorities. The police can never catch me. But the real kicker was the signature at the bottom. Jack the Ripper. Just like that, this faceless boogeyman suddenly had a very real, very terrifying brand. Now, if that first letter was just a nasty taunt, what happened next was a massive escalation. Another package shows up, but this one isn't just paper and ink. Nope, it contained a piece of an actual human kidney, supposedly taken from one of the recent victims. Talk about a gruesome delivery. It pushed the psychological terror to a whole new level, proving this guy, whoever he was willing to cross literally any line just to mess with the cops. But, as with everything in this bizarre case, there's a catch. Even today, experts fiercely debate where these letters actually came from. Were they really penned by the killer himself? Or, and this is a wild thought, were they just a sick hoax by a greedy journalist trying to whip up a frenzy and sell more newspapers? We might never know for sure. But hoax or not, it worked perfectly. The legend of Jack the Ripper was officially born. Section 3. Scotland Yard Suspects. So, with the public completely freaking out and the press having a field day, Scotland Yard had to do something, fast. And they cast a ridiculously wide net. They questioned hundreds of people. Because of those surgical wounds, local butchers and fancy doctors were right at the top of the list. Then, thanks to the heavy prejudices of the time, the local Polish immigrant population fell under heavy suspicion too. But get this, the suspect list even reached the absolute top of the social ladder. We're talking Prince Albert Victor of the royal family being named in theories. Insane, right? Now, what's really fascinating here is the total lack of technology back then. Put yourself in an 1888 detective's shoes for a second. They had zero advanced forensics. None. Compare that to today, where we've got DNA profiling, fingerprint databases, security cameras on every corner. Scotland Yard had absolutely nothing like that. Without any way to trace biological evidence, a smart killer could literally just step back into the fog and disappear without a trace. And honestly, vanish he did. Fast forward to November 1888. After the horrific murder of the final canonical victim, Mary Jane Kelly, the killings just stopped, completely abruptly. Just as fast as the nightmare started, it was over. The Ripper melted away into history. There was no big showdown, no dramatic arrest, definitely no confession. And it's exactly that sudden, eerie silence that cemented this as the ultimate unsolved mystery for over 130 years. Section 4, the 2014 DNA twist. Okay, let's fast forward and see how this builds, because things get really interesting in the modern era. For over a century, all we had were theories, right? But then hit the year 2014, and headlines everywhere explode with this massive question. Did modern DNA testing just finally crack a 130-year-old cold case? This whole modern breakthrough was based on one piece of physical evidence, a silk shawl reportedly found near the body of one of the victims. Back in 2014, researchers did modern DNA testing on the shawl, and the results supposedly pointed straight to a guy named Aaron Kosminski. Now, Kosminski was a Polish immigrant working as a barber in Whitechapel, and get this, he was actually one of Scotland Yard's original suspects back in 1888. For a minute there, it really looked like we finally had our smoking gun. But hold on, because the crucial point here is how we actually interpret that modern evidence. It's a huge divide. On one hand, you have the 2014 claim saying, boom, DNA solves it, case closed. But then you have the academic reality. We have to be totally impartial here and note that a ton of independent scientists and historians fiercely reject those results. They argue that this shawl has been touched by dozens of people over the last century. Hello, contamination. Plus, they really question the testing methods used. So actually, scratch the idea of a closed case. It's a super cool modern twist, but the scientific community is definitely not convinced Kosminski is our guy. And that brings us to the end of our trip through the foggy streets of Whitechapel. So what do we think? A butcher? A royal? A barber? Or just some random guy whose name is lost to time forever? We've gone through the facts, the creepy letters, the massive suspect list, and the whole DNA drama. Now, I'm handing the magnifying glass over to you. After 130 years, who do you think Jack the Ripper really was? Drop your best theories down in the comments. And hey, if you liked cracking open this historical cold case with us, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an explainer. We've got plenty more of the world's greatest mysteries to unravel together. Catch you next time.